Hi, I'm Joaquim Antonio. I'm a teacher, a writer, a writing teacher, and I work in UA&P. Today, I'd like to talk about inspiration. Sometimes I get asked, as a writer, where do you get all of these ideas? How do you get yourself inspired? And one of the common misconceptions is that we get inspiration like catching lightning, that it just happens, it just comes. Some part of it is true. Sometimes inspiration just does come, but for most part, you have to create the environment so that inspiration becomes more likely. I think of what William Faulkner once said, that a writer has to have three things: observation, experience, and imagination. And if you lack one, the other two will compensate for that lack. When I first discovered that quote, I discovered it indirectly from another writer that I also admire, Stephen Sondheim. And the way he said it was a bit different. He said that a writer needs three things: observation, imagination, experience. You can do without one, but you cannot do without two. While I credit them for that inspiration, for what they've said, I have my own take on this whole idea of observation, experience, and imagination. I believe that when it comes to what will inspire us, we have to develop experience, and we will get experience regardless of what we do. As long as we live life, we'll have experience, right? But the thing that we can consciously develop is observation. So when we observe, our experience becomes richer. And the keener we observe, the better our ideas are more likely to be. Okay, so the next question would be, but where does imagination come in? Well, I think imagination is us taking different elements of what we've observed and experienced and then putting them together. And I think the best way, or not really the best way, but the simplest way of demonstrating what I mean with how imagination works is that the reason why you can imagine a unicorn is because we have probably observed a horse, we've observed a horn, and we've observed a forehead. So we just combine the horn on the forehead of a horse, then we have a unicorn. And you'd realize that imagination is impossible without any experience or observation to fuel it. Okay. And I think that's the first step, really, with getting yourself inspired. You have to be active with your observations. You have to put yourself in a situation where you have worthwhile experiences. And I'm not talking about experiences that, where you have to really go out of the way, put yourself in some form of danger. No. I'm talking about being mindful with how you live your life every day and observing what you do. And then from there, you can start building things. Sometimes it can be as simple as presentation, or in my case, a lecture done right inside the classroom. And all I really have to do to tap my imagination would be something like, but what if the class didn't go right? Or what if the class did not receive the lesson well? Or what if my class was received well, but my lesson is something very, very dubious? Right? And that's in a way how I start picking things up. Of course, sometimes my classes are not really, I'm not able to deliver well. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I deliver well. Sometimes I deliver something that I thought was good at the time, but years later I realized, shucks, that was a little bit raw, right? And then and then I just combine those different pieces of my timeline together. Or sometimes I read something about something in the newspaper or on social media that it would be very interesting. And then I just take elements from that, and that's how imagination works. And imagination becomes rich thanks to observation and experience. But is it enough to get inspired? Not quite. There's one more element, but it's necessary. Of course, observation, experience, and imagination are the processes which can create the environment to get yourself inspired. But you also have to be curious with how you respond to your imagination. Generally, I think a very simple trick is once you combine these different things together, once you start realizing that, wow, I would like to read something like that, or I would like to watch something like that, or if you're into games, oh, I would like to play that. And you also realize at the same time that what I want to watch, what I want to read, what I want to play, they don't exist just yet. Then you start realizing that those things will never exist until you start writing. And in a way, I think that's how you get yourself inspired. I sometimes get asked the question, how do you deal with writer's block? I personally think that writer's block isn't really the problem, in a similar way that the fever is not really the problem. Rather, writer's block is more of a symptom. And as far as my research goes, I would say that there are five general types of writer's block, and there are, of course, some ways to get over them. The first source of writer's block would be you're tired. Okay, so you're not able to write because you're just so tired. And the answer to that is simple: rest. And if your day is really, really long and you really, really, really need to write, try getting your writing done first thing in the morning. Okay, that's the solution. The second kind of writer's block is you know what you want to write about, but you do not have the time. The solution to that is also simple. For me, what I would do, or what I do, because usually my schedule is also quite busy, is either I do my writing in the morning before my day actually begins, while everybody is still asleep, that's when I do my writing, or I train myself to use a different tool. Lately, for the past few years, I've learned how to rely on my phone when it comes to my creative writing. And because I rely on my phone, I am able to do my writing while I wait for meetings to start, while I'm lined up for the groceries, or sometimes when things are getting quite chaotic, I'm able to write even without a table, even without a quiet environment. I can write in the mall, I can write practically anywhere if I use my phone. So sometimes you have to find a particular device, and not just simply rely on limiting yourself to writing on the laptop or using a notebook to get your writing done. Now, the third kind of writer's block is you want to write, but you have nothing to write about. The solution is also very simple because all you really need to do is to look for something to write about. And for that, something very, very important is to know where you can get ideas from. And just to put it very simply, look into what you've experienced, look into what you've observed, and then probably based on what you've experienced and observed, you can mix these things together and you can imagine ideas by mixing and matching whatever you've observed and experienced. The fourth kind of writer's block is you may have an idea of what you want to write about, you may have time, you may have the energy to write, but you don't know how to start. And this is usually what many people would complain about. I have to write this thing, I want to write this thing, I just don't know where to start. And the trick here is to get yourself organized, which is, of course, not a helpful solution until I probably mention how exactly you can get yourself organized. And for me, the way I do it is I would start off with a one sentence concept. I should be able to write my concept in just one sentence. And that sentence should be something that, with just one look, I already get prompted to write. So until I have that sentence, I don't really start a writing project. Okay. Once I have that sentence, it's easy now to come up with a 3 to 5 point outline, depending on the length of what I have to do. Now, why is it a 3 to 5 point outline? It's a 3 to 5 point outline depending on the kinds of questions I give myself. And usually, questions that I would ask myself are, in the broadest sense, these three. What do I want my readers to know? What do my readers already know? And what do my readers need to know in order for them to be ready to know what I want them to know? Having those bullet points allows me to start off with what would be common between me and my potential readers, and then slowly start building up that commonality, and then eventually reach that point where this is what I would want you to know, and then I'll end there. Okay, you'd see those are 3 points. Sometimes it can be 4 points because sometimes I would start off with what I would want them to know, all right, and then start providing context. Or sometimes it can also be 5 points in the sense that I give them a general overview of what's going on. The three questions that I've provided, they're the middle, and then I provide them with a so what. Now, what are the implications of what we just discussed? And in a way, that becomes a very simple structure. And then the moment I have a structure, then the actual writing happens. And the writer's block that we face there is a little bit difficult, also quite common, where you want to get things done right the first time. And the solution there is to not try to get it right the first time. It's just to get it done. Okay. And sometimes the idea here is you have to psych yourself up. So what I would do, especially if I'm not in the mood to write, but I have to write something, is I just open my laptop, or sometimes I open my phone. I give myself a countdown, a 5 second countdown, because if you give yourself a 5 second countdown, your mind already psychs itself up for the work. As you're listening to yourself, give the countdown, and then I tell myself I'm only going to do this for 2 to 3 minutes. And usually at the end of those 2 to 3 minutes, I'm already at a momentum, and I usually get a lot of work done. And I don't really care about the quality. Anything that just comes to my head, I just put it in, because my last step is revising. Here's the big secret, really, when it comes to writing, that readers don't really care how many drafts it took to get the writing done. To think in terms of steps, it's a good way to avoid writer's block, because you could say, I don't care if my writing is horrible, I can improve on it later. And that means that I am not juggling too many tasks of, what's my idea? How is it going to look good? How is it going to get organized? Usually that's what paralyzes us. That's the fourth kind of writer's block. Thinking of all the tasks you have to do and trying to do all of them at once. Now, the last writer's block, I think the hardest to fight against, is the one of ego. Sometimes what stops us from writing is we put more importance to the byproduct, to the benefits that come from outside the writing. Sometimes you want to win awards, sometimes you want to get published, sometimes you want to make money, you want to become popular. And what I realized is that can really stop you from writing, because you become a lot more conscious with what you want to write. You want to come up with something mind blowing and so on and so forth. And that really destroys creativity. My solution there, it's a simple solution, but it's not an easy one, is you have to find the joy of the activity itself. Sometimes you have that joy of writing something that is not for anybody but for just one person. Sometimes it's just really writing a good advice as a text. Sometimes it's about writing a heartwarming greeting card, right? And we have to have that little joy. If we think that we're going to write because I'm joining a contest and I'm going to try to win it, sometimes what happens there is that we're just really pandering. We're trying to guess what the imaginary judges would like. And sometimes, because of what we imagine the imaginary judges would like, we compromise our own quality. And our minds struggle with that. And that's why we're not able to write. But if you write something because you yourself want to read it, because you yourself want to watch it, or if you're into gaming, you want to write it because you want to play it, then writing becomes a lot easier. Then the writer's block is easier to break. And I hope those insights on the five kinds of writer's block helps.